Welcome in, everybody. Ready to dive into Say Nothing. We're really going to get into some of the most captivating events and details of this whole story, Patrick Radden Keefe's investigation into murder and memory in Northern Ireland. I think you're going to find it fascinating. So to help us along the way, I've got an expert here.
It's great to be here.
So glad to have you. This book, it just does a fantastic job, I think, of bringing together those personal stories and the political and historical context of the Troubles. It's not just about the IRA, right? It's about everyday life for people during that time. The fear, the distrust, the moral dilemmas, how did they handle this?
It's about people just trying to live their lives, trying to raise their families, go to work, but always under this cloud of tension and uncertainty.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Right off the bat, we meet Jean McConville, a widowed mother of 10. She's living in Divislats, a Belfast housing project. I've read about it, but what was it really like in Divislats?
Well, imagine a place where every day feels like walking on eggshells. You never know who to trust, who might be watching you, who might be listening. That was Divislats, a microcosm of the Troubles, a pressure cooker of anxieties and suspicions.
And raising 10 children alone in that environment. Just extraordinary.
It's almost unimaginable. And then one night in December 1972, right in front of her children, she's abducted from her home, just gone. For decades, her family searched for answers, clinging to hope, but also grappling with those rumors and whispers. Was she an informer? What really happened?
It's just chilling, isn't it? And there's this detail in the book that really struck me. It happened not long before she was taken. Keefe describes how she comforted a wounded British soldier outside her door. Just a simple act of kindness. But in that context, it was incredibly risky.
Right, even compassion could be dangerous. And sadly, that act was later used by some to paint her as an informer, to try to justify her abduction. But official investigations in her family, they've always denied that she was ever involved with the British.
But the mystery lingers, right? And it gets even more complicated when you consider her son, Archie. He was used as an unwitting accomplice, wasn't he?
It's heartbreaking. The IRA told him he could go with his mother, but when they took her away, they left him behind. Imagine being that boy, seeing your mother disappear into the night, not knowing if you'd ever see her again.
And the IRA later admitted that they killed her. But the circumstances, the accusations of her being an informer, it just hangs over the whole story.
It's a perfect example of the fear and uncertainty that define the Troubles. It's a reminder that sometimes the truth gets lost in the fog of war.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit and talk about the Price sisters, Dolores and Marion. They represent this, transformation of Irish republicanism, right? They went from being activists to being key figures in the provisional IRA.
They were raised in a staunchly Republican family. Surrounded by stories of resistance, stories of rebellion. They grew up with this deep sense of injustice, witnessing the discrimination against Catholics firsthand.
So they were involved in civil rights activism early on. But how did they end up joining the IRA?
I think they grew disillusioned with peaceful protest. They came to believe that armed struggle was the only way to achieve their goals. So they joined the Provisional IRA, a more militant faction, ready to escalate the conflict to use violence.
They even participated in bank robberies, didn't they, to fund the IRA's operations?
They were incredibly committed, willing to take huge risks for the cause, and they believed they were fighting a just war, and that belief fueled their actions, even when those actions resulted in violence and destruction.
Which brings us to the 1973 Old Bailey bombing in London, a significant escalation attacking the heart of the British justice system. How did they pull it off?
It was a meticulously planned operation. They smuggled car bombs from Ireland to London disguised as tourists. And on March 8th, 1973, those bombs detonated outside the Old Bailey courthouse and the Ministry of Agriculture. Extensive damage, hundreds injured.
It must have sent shockwaves through Britain.
Absolutely. A massive manhunt followed. The Price sisters were eventually caught at Heathrow, trying to get back to Ireland. Sentenced to life imprisonment in England. It was a turning point for them.
But they didn't just sit quietly in prison, did they? They went on a hunger strike, a grueling 200-day hunger strike.
They were demanding to be recognized as political prisoners, demanding to be transferred back to Northern Ireland. It was a powerful act of defiance. They endured force-feeding, a brutal practice, but they wouldn't back down.
And that hunger strike, it really captured the world's attention, didn't it?
It did, and it highlighted the lengths to which they were willing to go for their beliefs. It's a story that really makes you think about radicalization, about the complexities of this conflict.
Because it's easy to label people like the Price sisters as simply terrorists. But Keefe's book, it makes you look beyond those labels and makes you consider the human stories behind these actions.
Right. It's a reminder that everyone has their own motivations, their own justifications, their own struggles.
Okay, let's turn now to another key figure, Brendan Hughes, also known as the Dark, an IRA commander in West Belfast. He was right in the thick of it.
Hughes gives us this raw, unfiltered look at the IRA's operations, their tactics, their mindset. He even survived an assassination attempt by British undercover soldiers. It's a glimpse into this shadowy world of intelligence operations and targeted killings.
A world of safe houses, secret communications, the constant fear of betrayal.
Exactly. And he was involved in some of the IRA's most significant campaigns, including the 1972 Bloody Friday bombings.
Those were a series of coordinated explosions across Belfast, targeting infrastructure, commercial centers. It was devastating. What was the IRA thinking?
Well, Hughes defended those bombings, saying they were necessary. He argued they were targeting symbols of British rule, symbols of economic power.
Those attacks also resulted in many civilian casualties.
Hughes acknowledged that. He admitted there were unintended consequences. But he also justified it as part of the struggle, the fight for their cause.
It's chilling, isn't it? To see how violence can be justified, how even those who orchestrate these attacks grapple with the moral implications.
And again, it's a reminder that there are always multiple perspectives, even within the IRA. Keefe doesn't shy away from the brutality, but he also explores the human side of it.
Okay, so Hughes' story takes another turn when he's captured alongside Gerry Adams.
That's right. Adams, a key figure in the peace process, but their imprisonment was short-lived. They managed to escape, tunneling out of the Maze prison. It made them folk heroes in the Republican community.
Talk about a daring escape. But Hughes' relationship with Adams, it would eventually sour, wouldn't it?
He became disillusioned with the peace process, with the compromises being made. He felt it was a betrayal of everything they had fought for.
And that disillusionment, we see it echoed in many others who dedicated their lives to the struggle, don't we? They felt let down, like their sacrifices were being ignored.
And Hughes, he became very vocal, accusing Adams of being a British informant. He even claimed that Adams had orchestrated the disappearance of Jean McConville and others suspected of being informers. These accusations, they were part of a secret oral history project at Boston College. Explosive stuff.
And Adams, of course, denied everything. But the shadow of informants, those touts as they were called, it hangs heavy over the whole story.
The fear was pervasive. Being labeled a tout could get you killed. The IRA was ruthless in pursuing them, carrying out killings and disappearances. That fear, it created an atmosphere of paranoia and distrust.
In Jean McConville's case, with the conflicting accounts of her alleged role as an informer, it's a perfect example of how that fear could destroy lives.
It's a dark side of the Troubles, a reminder of the brutal realities, the moral compromises made on both sides.
And then there's the mystery of the radio, supposedly found in Jean McConville's flat. Just one small detail, but it adds another layer of intrigue to her disappearance.
Right. If there was a radio, it might support the claims that she was involved with the British. But the accounts are inconsistent and there's no official confirmation.
So it just fuels the speculation. It shows how difficult it is to separate fact from fiction in a conflict where propaganda and hidden agendas were everywhere. It's like trying to piece together a puzzle with missing pieces.
And it emphasizes this ongoing quest for truth and justice in Northern Ireland. We need to understand what happened, to hold those responsible accountable, and to bring closure for the families of those who were lost.
It's a complex story, and we've only just scratched the surface.
As we go deeper into Say Nothing, we run into people, who operated in the shadows, navigating a world of secrets and betrayals. One of these figures is Arthur McAllister, a seemingly ordinary toy salesman who's leading a double life.
A toy salesman?
Yes.
With a secret life. What's the story there?
How does he fit into all of this? Arthur McAllister was a cover, a disguise, for Brendan Hughes, the IRA commander we were just talking about. After he escaped from prison, he had to disappear, create a new identity, to operate safely, to evade the authorities, to continue his work.
So he basically became a ghost, giving up his old life, taking on a whole new one. It must have taken incredible commitment to do that, to cut all ties and just disappear like that.
It shows you the lengths they were willing to go to, the risks they were willing to take for the cause. Hughes, he really transformed himself. He shaved off his mustache, dyed his hair, created this whole new backstory.
It sounds like something out of a spy movie. The constant worry of being caught, all the planning, the mental strain of living a double life like that.
Keefe takes us right into Hughes's world, showing us the safe houses, the secret communication methods, the pressure of keeping up this false identity. It was a dangerous game, you know?
Yeah.
One wrong move, and it could have been over for him.
Okay, I want to circle back to the Price sisters for a minute. Their imprisonment in England takes a dramatic turn when they go on that hunger strike. They were demanding to be recognized as political prisoners, to be transferred back to Northern Ireland.
Their hunger strike became a major turning point, not just for them, but for the whole issue of prisoner rights in Northern Ireland. They went through force feeding, a terrible and humiliating practice, for over 200 days.
It's hard to fathom the physical and emotional toll that must have taken on them. What drove them to do that?
They felt a profound sense of injustice. They believed they were being denied their fundamental rights as political prisoners. They saw the hunger strike as a way to challenge the British government, to bring attention to the plight of Republican prisoners.
Their determination was remarkable. But their hunger strike, it also had unintended consequences, didn't it?
Unfortunately, yes. The World Medical Association eventually declared force-feeding unethical, and the UK changed its policy. But this change would later allow Bobby Sands and other hunger strikers to die in prison, because force-feeding was no longer an option.
So their act of defiance, while it did shine a light on the prisoner rights issue, ultimately contributed to a more tragic outcome.
It's a complex and heartbreaking legacy, a reminder that even well-intentioned actions can have far-reaching and unforeseen effects.
Now, Keefe doesn't just focus on the political and military side of things, right? He also delves into the personal lives of these individuals, reminding us that they were not just symbols, but people with their own stories, their own relationships, like Dolores Price's marriage to the actor Stephen Rea.
Yeah, that was a surprising pairing. An IRA bomber married to a famous actor. It really shows you how complicated people's lives can be, how their personal and political paths can intersect in unexpected ways.
It definitely makes you question your assumptions about these figures. Do you think Price's relationship with Rhea changed how people viewed her?
It's hard to say for sure, but I think it humanized her to some extent, you know? It showed that even someone involved in violence could still want a more normal life. She became a mother, she explored creative outlets.
It reminds us that people are more than just their past actions. But her past, it still haunted her, didn't it?
She struggled with PTSD, she had to deal with the memories of her time in the IRA, the deaths of people she knew.
It underscores the lasting psychological impact of the conflict. The scars, both visible and invisible, remained.
The Troubles left a deep mark on individuals, families, communities, and those wounds, they continue to shape Northern Ireland today.
Keefe shows us how these seemingly isolated events can have a ripple effect, influencing the larger conflict. One of those events was the funeral of 3 IRA members killed in Gibraltar in 1988. That funeral, it turned into a flashpoint.
Yeah, that funeral, it was a tense emotional event with thousands of mourners, and it really showcased the divisions in Northern Ireland. And then in the middle of the procession, this awful thing happened.
Keefe describes how 2 British soldiers, David Howes and Derek Wood, they accidentally drove into the funeral procession. A terrible mistake that put them right in the center of this already highly charged situation.
They were trapped in their vehicle, surrounded by an angry mob. What happened next was a horrific act of violence. They were pulled from the car, beaten, and shot dead by IRA members.
The whole incident was caught on video, and it shocked the world. It was a stark reminder of the brutality of the conflict, the deep hatred and mistrust that existed.
It's frightening how quickly violence could erupt, even during a moment of mourning. It shows how fragile peace can be and how difficult it is to achieve reconciliation. It's a stark illustration of the complexity of the conflict, you know, the blurring of lines between victim and perpetrator.
A tragic reminder of how quickly things could spiral out of control. But there were also signs of hope amidst all this violence. Keefe talks about Father Alec Reid, a Catholic priest who had been advocating for peace.
Father Reid was instrumental in starting secret talks between the IRA and the British government. He believed in the power of dialogue, the possibility of finding common ground, even in the most intractable conflicts.
His efforts, often done behind the scenes, really helped pave the way for the ceasefire and the Good Friday Agreement. He understood that there was no military solution, that a political solution was the only way to achieve lasting peace.
His story is inspiring. It shows that even in the darkest of times, individuals can make a difference. He embodies the hope for a better future.
Now, as we continue through Say Nothing, we meet Gerry Adams. He became a prominent figure as the leader of Sinn Féin, the political wing of the IRA, and he played a crucial role in the peace process. But his past, It's shrouded in mystery, and his involvement with the IRA is still debated.
Adams has always denied any involvement in the IRA, even though many believed he held a leadership position. He presented himself as a peacemaker, someone who saw the need for compromise to end the conflict. But his past remained controversial.
Keefe explores the contradictions in Adams' persona, the questions surrounding his role in the IRA, the accusations that he was involved in violence, including Jean McConville's disappearance.
Brendan Hughes, in those secret recordings at Boston College, directly accused Adams of betraying the Republican cause, of being behind the disappearances of suspected informers. It's a debate that continues to this day about Adams's legacy, about the price of peace.
It's a tough question to wrestle with, you
Yeah.
know? Can certain actions, even in a conflict, ever be justified? The peace process, it did ultimately bring an end to the violence, but it also created frustration and anger for some who felt that their sacrifices were being ignored, even betrayed.
And as the peace process moved forward, a new chapter in the search for truth and justice began. Families of those who disappeared during the Troubles, including Jean McConville's children, they wanted answers. They wanted the remains of their loved ones returned.
Their determination was admirable. They brought this issue to the forefront. They challenged the IRA to admit what they'd done, to provide information about the fate of the disappeared.
Their efforts, which were often met with resistance and denial, underscore the ongoing struggle for accountability, the importance of addressing past wrongs in order to build a truly just and lasting peace. Their stories remind us that the search for truth and justice is a journey, and it requires courage, persistence, and a willingness to face hard truths.
The Boston College tapes, they also became a focal point in the search for truth. They were meant to be a historical archive, but they contained candid accounts of IRA operations, personal experiences of those involved in the conflict. The PSNI, the Northern Ireland Police, wanted access to the recordings, and it became a clash between historical preservation and the pursuit of justice.
It turned into a legal battle, with academics and journalists arguing for the confidentiality of the recordings, while the PSNI argued that they held crucial evidence about past crimes. It raised some ethical questions about historical research, about balancing the protection of sources with the need for accountability.
It's a delicate balance. How do you preserve history while also seeking justice for past wrongs? There were concerns that the tapes could reignite old tensions, that they could undermine the progress that had been made towards peace.
It's a reminder that the past is never really over, that the wounds of conflict can be easily reopened. As we continue to delve into this story, the question of who knew what and when becomes really important to understanding the IRA. Keefe reveals that there was a secret internal security unit within the IRA called the Nutting Squad. They were in charge of rooting out informers, keeping discipline within the organization.
Wait, so there was a unit dedicated to hunting down suspected traitors within their own ranks. Sounds intense.
They were ruthless and secretive. They operated with impunity, instilling fear within the IRA itself. And then there's this shocking twist. Freddie Scappaticci, the leader of the Nutting Squad for years, he was a British informant. His code name was Steak Knife.
Whoa, hold on. The guy in charge of finding and eliminating informers was actually a double agent. That's incredible.
Yeah, it was a huge bombshell for the Republican community. To think that the very person tasked with finding and eliminating informers was a double agent the whole time, betraying the IRA from the inside.
That changes everything. It makes you question how deep the British infiltration of the IRA went, how much they were manipulating things, the level of distrust that must have existed.
It makes you rethink everything you thought you knew about the conflict. And it also fueled allegations that the British security forces were colluding with loyalist paramilitaries, that they were turning a blind eye to loyalist violence, maybe even using it to their advantage in their fight against the IRA.
Those are serious allegations. They challenge the official narrative of the conflict, showing us just how murky things were.
Say Nothing forces us to face these uncomfortable truths. It's a story that makes you question the nature of truth, how difficult it is to separate fact from fiction in a situation where deception and secrecy were the norm.
Now, as we get closer to the end of this part of our discussion, Keefe brings us to a very moving moment that speaks to the power of memory and the need for closure. Jean McConville's remains were finally found in 2003, buried on a beach in County Louth.
It was a bittersweet discovery. It brought some closure to her family, but it was also a harsh reminder of the brutality of the conflict and the long shadow it casts.
Imagine what it must have been like for her children. They'd spent their lives not knowing what happened to their mother. Now they could finally lay her to rest, finding some peace after decades of uncertainty and pain.
It was a recognition that even in death there could be healing. But it also highlighted the need for accountability, the importance of bringing those responsible for her death to justice. The search for truth, the struggle to come to terms with the legacy of the Troubles, all of that continues. As we get into this final part of Say Nothing, it really hits you that the search for truth and justice, it's a long road. And it goes way beyond those formal peace agreements.
It's not like signing a paper makes everything all right again, does it?
Not at all. The Troubles, they didn't just vanish overnight. The epilogue of Say Nothing, it catches us up on some of the key people, shows us how their lives went after the Good Friday Agreement and how, the past just kept hanging over them.
We see that with Dolores Price, for example.
Yeah.
She was such a committed IRA member, but she became really disillusioned with the peace process. What happened there?
I think she felt like everything they had fought for, the sacrifices, the lives lost, the years in prison, it was all being swept under the rug for political expediency. She saw the peace process as a betrayal, a compromise that came at too high a price.
And she was especially critical of Jerry Adams, her former commander. She went so far as to publicly accuse him of being involved in Jean McConville's disappearance and the disappearances of other suspected informers. And Adams, of course, denied it all.
It brought that whole debate about Adams's past back to the surface, his alleged role in IRA activities, and the moral compromises made in the name of peace. Price's accusations, they were fueled by her own experiences, the trauma she had endured. They really highlight the internal conflicts within the Republican movement, the struggle to come to terms with a past filled with violence and betrayal.
It's like even when the fighting stops, the wounds from the past, they just don't heal easily. The need for truth and justice, it can last for generations.
Exactly. And it's like the book throws another curveball at us, remember Steak Knife?
Yeah.
And the Boston College tapes. Well, on top of all that, Keefe uncovers another layer in the epilogue. He talks about this incredible burglary at Castlereagh, a high-security police station in Belfast.
Wait, they broke into a police station. That's a bold move. What were they hoping to find?
This was back in 2002, a group of IRA members. They broke into Castlereagh. They were after sensitive files, information about informants, surveillance operations, the inner workings of British intelligence. It was like striking at the heart of the security forces intelligence network.
It sounds like a scene out of a spy movie. A daring heist with the potential to expose secrets that could have threatened the peace process.
No one knows for sure what their motive was. Maybe they were trying to protect their own informants, or maybe they wanted to discredit British intelligence methods, or maybe it was just a show of force, a way of saying, hey, we're still here and we can still hit you where it hurts.
Whatever their reasons, that burglary had major consequences, didn't it?
Absolutely. It ramped up tensions, undermined trust between the IRA and the British government, and cast a shadow over the peace process. It brought those questions about the legacy of the Troubles back to the forefront, those challenges of moving from a society built on conflict to one that values peace.
A reminder that the scars of the past, they run deep. What's amazing about Say Nothing is how Keith connects all these individual stories to the larger picture of Northern Ireland. He shows how the past continues to influence the present, how communities remain divided along historical lines, how the trauma of the conflict still affects individuals and families today.
And he doesn't shy away from the efforts to address this legacy, the work of those truth and reconciliation commissions, the ongoing pursuit of justice for victims of violence, and this constant struggle to create a shared future that's free from conflict.
Say Nothing is a powerful book. It really makes you think. It leaves you with a deep understanding of the complexities of the Troubles, the devastating impact of violence, and this enduring search for truth, justice, and reconciliation.
It challenges us to look at those uncomfortable truths, to grapple with those moral gray areas, to consider the long-term consequences of violence and division.
It's a book that stays with you long after you finish reading it. It makes you question the nature of conflict, the power of memory, and the ongoing search for peace. I know you want to dive into this yourself now, so if you're interested in learning more, be sure to check out Say Nothing. We've included an affiliate link in the description where you can purchase the book.
It's a journey into the heart of a conflict that continues to resonate today. It's a story of human resilience, of loss and betrayal, and the enduring hope for a better future. Thanks for joining us as we explored this captivating story.
It's been an incredible journey, and I hope you come away with a deeper understanding of this complex and fascinating period in history. We'll see you next time for another deep dive.